Good morning, students. In the previous class, I have introduced you to the three sectors. In the third section, that is primary, secondary and tertiary sectors in India, we discussed on how the tertiary sector attained its importance over the 4 decades. It had a very high growth. Today we will move on to the next subsection, that is, where are most of the people employed? Now, can you tell what kind of works people did or still do? There are many different kinds of work done by different kinds of people. We have seen this in the last video class. There are people with highly skilled and educated at one end, and on the other end there are people who are engaged in services such as small shopkeepers, repair persons, transport persons, etc. Now look at the graph 2 and 3. Graph 2 presents the share of sectors in GDP in percentage. This graph 1, it also showed the GDP by 3 sectors, but it was in rupees, not in percentage. But here, to understand the condition of the people that are employed, it has been taken in percentage form. Okay. So in graph 3, share of sectors in employment is given, that too in percentage. Here in graph 2, while there has been a change in the share of the 3 sectors in GDP, as discussed in the previous class, the tertiary sector had a huge growth and development, but there has not been similar change or shift towards employment. Graph 3, which shows the share of employment in the 3 sectors in 1972 to 73 and 2011 to 2012. Here, the primary sector still had the largest employer in comparison to the 2 sectors in both the year. So, why didn't a similar shift out of primary sector happen in case of employment? That too in those 4 decades of time. It is because not enough jobs were created in the secondary and tertiary sectors. One of the reasons for tertiary sector having less employee is that they require highly skilled and educated workers. In India, more than half of the workers in the country are working in the primary sector, mainly in agriculture, producing only a quarter of the GDP. And one of the reasons behind it is that there are more people in agriculture than is necessary. So even if you move a few people out from the total number of people that are working, there will be no change in the production. This is the case of underemployment. In other words, workers in agricultural sector are underemployed. Let's take an example to understand this. In the case of a small farmer like Lakshmi, she owns a land, an unirrigated land measuring about 2 hectares. The land is dependent only on rain to grow crops like jawar and arhar. She could not afford any irrigation facilities. All the 5 members of the family are working in that land because they don't have any other work and they have nowhere else to go. So in such a small plot of land, all the 5 members of the family are working. Their labor effort is getting divided here. So when 3 people can do the same work and get same produce in the same amount, the extra work by extra member is useless here. In this case, none of them are fully employed. So, this is the situation of underemployment, where people are apparently working, but all of them are made to work less than their potential. You have already come across this in class 9. Now, what is the other name for this situation? It is also called as disguised unemployment. This type of unemployment, that is disguised unemployment, can be seen all over India. Now, supposing a landlord Sukram comes and hire one or two members of the family to work on his land. These two members are now earning by working. It would bring some income to the family, and besides that, they are still producing from their land in the same amount, as the two members' absence did not affect production on their farm. So the other three members of the family, they are still working and they are still producing the same amount of production. This situation of unemployment does not happen only in the primary sector. It can also happen in other sectors as well. For example, in the service sector, here, painters, plumbers, repair persons, and others doing odd jobs, they may not find work every day. They are not able to earn when they don't find work, or some may earn very little even after working for the whole day. But they still do this work because they do not have any other better opportunities. Now, think to combat these problems of unemployment, what can be done? What steps should be taken to overcome unemployment or any sort of unemployment? In the next subsection, we will see how to create more employment. So to create more employment opportunities, there are few steps that has been taken up by the government. We shall see this and look on what are those steps. Let us here take an example of Lakshmi again. To help the farmers like Lakshmi, the government can spend some money or banks can provide a loan to construct a well for her family to irrigate the land. This is the very first measure. With the irrigation facility, Lakshmi can now grow second crops such as wheat along with jawar and arhar. This would also employ more people as the work increases. Now with the better irrigation facilities, Lakshmi is able to produce more crops. Large production means they would want to sell some of the produce in the market. So the second measure to create more employment is if the government invests some money in transportation and storage of crops, or makes better rural roads so that mini trucks reach everywhere. Several farmers like Lakshmi, who now have access to water, can continue to grow and sell these crops. By contributing and improving transportation and storage of crops, employment increases not only to the farmers but also more people get the opportunity to be engaged in transport and trade services. And the third measure that can be taken up is by identifying, promoting, and then locate industries and services in semi-rural areas where a large number of people may be employed. Industries such as dal mill, cold storage, processing of vegetables should be set up. By setting up these industries, more people, especially from the semi-rural areas, will have the chance to get employed. Do you know that in India there are about 200 million, that is about 20 crore children in the school-going age group? Out of this, only about 2/3 of them are attending schools, and many of them are working as child laborers. If these children who are not going to school, to educate them, more of teachers, buildings, and staffs will be needed. From this study that has been conducted by Niti Aayog, that is National Institution for Transforming India, which was earlier known as Planning Commission, it estimated that nearly 20 lakh jobs can be created in the education sector alone. Niti Aayog is a policy to bring development in India. The name from Planning Commission to Niti Aayog was changed in the year 2014. Their role is same, only the name has been changed. So this is our fourth measure to create job opportunities in the education sector. The fifth measure can be taken by the government is by improving and promoting tourism, regional craft industry and new services like information technology. This would also create employment for many people. And besides that, government has also provided a scheme like Narega, now known as Manrega, which is Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act 2005. In short, it is known as Manrega. This scheme mainly was implemented based on the law right to work, and it was introduced in about 625 districts of India. Under this act, all those who are able to and are in need of work in rural areas are guaranteed 100 days of employment in a year by the government. But suppose if the government fails in providing work, even then it will at least give unemployment allowances to the people. This act is one of the measures taken up by government to provide employment, which is our sixth measure. All these six measures are important in the creation of employment and removal of disguised unemployment. Till now, we have discussed on the division of sectors into primary, secondary, and tertiary. This is the division for overall economic activities. There is also another way of classifying activities in the economy. What can it be? Yes, we shall discuss this on our next section, that is division of sectors as organized and unorganized. This division is mainly based on the employment. First, let us look into the story of Kanta and Kamal. Both of them are employed, but they have some differences. What could be those differences? And what are their conditions of work? We shall see that in this story. Kanta works in an office. She works from morning 9:30 a.m. to evening 5:30 p.m. She gets her salary on monthly basis. Besides salary, she also gets provident fund, medical allowances, rent allowances. On top of that, she even gets paid holidays on Sundays, which does not deduct any money from her salary. And when she joined the work in the beginning, she even got appointment letter which had some rules and regulations, terms and conditions of work. But in the case of Kamal, it is very opposite. He is a daily wage laborer who earns on a daily basis. He works in a grocery shop, and he goes to the shop at 7:30 a.m. in the morning and works till 8 p.m. in the evening. He gets no other allowances apart from his wages. He also has no paid holidays such as Kanta. While joining, he did not receive any form of formal letters as well, and he can be asked to leave the job anytime by his employer. So what are the differences between Kanta and Kamal's condition of work that you notice here? There is a huge difference in both the case, isn't it? In almost every part. Here, Kanta's work is classified under the organized sector. From the word organized itself, you can understand that the work is properly planned and have certain terms and conditions. Organized sectors covers those enterprises or places of work where the terms of employment are regular and therefore people have assured work. They are also registered by the government. It is called organized because it has some formal processes and procedures. Employees under this sector enjoys a security of employment. They receive regular monthly salary, and when they retire from their work, they even get pensions. These type of employment can be seen in government offices. And in contrast, in the case of Kamal works in the unorganized sector. We have seen how his work is unpredictable and not secure. So what do you understand by an unorganized sector? The unorganized sector is characterized by small and scattered units which are largely outside the control of the government. Under this, the employment terms are not fixed and regular. They are not even registered with the government. They are paid on daily wages and their pay is very low even though they work harder. Also, there is no additional benefits that are provided to them. This type of sector mainly involves the casual workers in construction and shops. Now let us see how to protect workers in the unorganized sectors. How can their job be secured? The organized sector offers jobs that are the most sought after, but the employment opportunities in the organized sector have been expanding very slowly. Every people needs and want jobs. Almost all, or say most of the people, seek for jobs in the organized sector. But as this sector is growing very slowly and is limited, not many people get the opportunity to be employed here. Many people are forced to enter the unorganized sector. And since the 1990s, it became common for large number of workers to lose their jobs in the organized sector and enter in an organized sector where they earn very low. There are need of work, but also besides this, there are need for protection and support of the workers in the unorganized sector. In rural areas, these people who had joined unorganized sectors are landless agricultural laborers, small and marginal farmers, sharecroppers and artisans such as weavers, blacksmiths, carpenters and goldsmiths. And in urban areas, they are workers in small-scale industry, casual workers in construction, trade and transport, etc. and those who work as street vendors, head load workers, garment makers, rag pickers, etc. Here, the small farmers, who comprise of 80% of the rural households, should be supported in procuring seeds, agricultural inputs, credit, storage facilities, and marketing outlets. And in urban areas, government can help small-scale industry in procuring raw material and marketing outputs or goods. So the interests of the casual workers in rural as well as urban areas must be protected by law. And we also find that majority of workers from scheduled caste, tribes and backward communities find themselves in the unorganized sector. These people from this caste and this group, these people, they get very low payment, but besides that, beside the low payment as well, these workers also face social discrimination and other irregularities. So the government should take steps to ensure equal treatment for all, particularly low caste, and minimum wages act should be enforced strictly. The government should also take steps to ensure regulation of working hours and grant of medical facilities as well. Therefore, protection and support of the unorganized sector workers is very necessary for both economic and social development. Now, in our last section of the lesson, let us look into the sectors in terms of ownership, which is divided into public and private sectors. It is mainly based on the owning of assets. Now, what is an asset? It is a thing or item of property which is useful or have value that is owned by a person or company. It can either be owned by public or private sector. In the public sector, the government owns most of the assets and provides all these services. But in the case of private sector, ownership of assets and delivery of services is in the hands of private individuals or companies. Railways or post office is an example of the public sector, and it can also include those government schools, hospitals, and any other officials and administration. But for private sector, the examples are Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited or Reliance Industries Limited, which are owned privately. This company, that is Tata Iron and Steel Company Limited, it is owned by a group, that is Tata Group, whose current CEO is TV Narendran, and the founder of this group, this company, is Jamsetji Tata. It was named after him. And the Reliance Industries Limited, it is also owned by an individual called Dhirubhai Ambani. So you can see the difference here. These companies are owned by an individual, and this railways, post office, which is also a public property, they are owned by government. Private sector aims to earn maximum profit, whereas public sector aims at public welfare. It provides basic facilities like education, health, food, and security to the people. Private sector provides consumer goods to the people. They earn by selling the goods, which we have to pay. We people, we have to pay money to these individuals and companies. But how do government receive money? From where do they earn, when their motive is not even to earn money? The government raise money through taxes and other ways to meet expenses on the services rendered by it. It means government gets the money from the people in the form of taxes. It is actually people's money that are used for people itself. Government spend money on various activities to provide basic facilities to the public. Government works on various activities such as construction of roads, bridges, railways, harbors, generating electricity, providing irrigation through dams, etc. The government has to take these type of activities and make sure that people, the public, are getting these facilities. There are also some activities which the government has to support. It is the government who provides electricity, and without electricity, the private sector may not be even able to continue their production. So, private sector needs government, and it is always cheaper when government charges on anything made by them. So, the another example is the fair price shop. You have read about this in class 9 as well. The government of India buys wheat and rice from farmers at a fair price. They buy at a fair price from the farmers, and these are stored in godowns and sold at a lower price to the consumers through ration shops. For example, the government buys the grains at rupees 30 per kg. That is the fair price. But when it is sold to the consumer buys it at rupees 5 per kg. Rest of the 25 rupees are at loss by the government. In this way, the government supports both farmers by buying from them and the consumers by selling at a very low price. The consumer here is the below poverty line people. It is mainly for the poor people who cannot afford the food in the market price. And there are a large number of activities which are the primary responsibility of the government. The government must spend on these. There are some responsibilities that the government has to carry out, and they have to spend on these facilities to improve the livelihood of the people, especially the poor people. Providing health and education facilities for all is one example. And running proper schools and providing quality education, particularly elementary education, is the duty of the government. In India, there are children in large numbers who are malnourished and ill. The infant mortality rate of India, which we have studied in the first chapter, it shows how poor is the health status of the children in our country. This is one of the reasons why government has to pay attention to the needs of people. They also should pay attention to aspects of human development such as availability of safe drinking water, housing facilities for the poor, and food and nutrition. It is also the duty of the government to take care of the poorest and most ignored regions of the country through increased spending in such areas. This would improve the condition of the country and its people. So with this we have reached to the end of this chapter. So far, what have you learned in this chapter? We have discussed on the sectors of the economic activities, isn't it? So how many sectors are there? There are 3 sectors: primary, secondary and tertiary. Besides this sector, on the basis of employment, it can be divided into organized and unorganized sector. And on the basis of ownership, how is it divided? It is divided into public and private sector. Here government plays a vital role. So this is the end of the chapter, and I hope you have understood the lesson. Thank you.